Welcome to the Market Domination Talk Show. I am your host, Seth Greene. I am fortunate enough to be here today with Dave Farrow of DaveFarrow.com. Dave, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I am fantastic. You are the Guinness record holder for the world's greatest memory. Now, to earn that title, you had to memorize the exact order of 59 decks of cards in a row. So obviously they don't let you go to Las Vegas.
I'm kicked out of 2 casinos. I'm actually technically banned from them. But,
Banned from 2.
You know.
Okay, so what's crazy is you weren't born with a great memory.
No.
You invented a system to help you do better in school, and that same system is now backed by a double-blind neuroscience study at McGill University. Your theory on memory triggers and memory modes is used in neuroscience today. What is this new theory about how our memory functions?
Well, essentially what I was able to show is that there are some situations where you memorize something without repetition. Something crazy happens, like an accident or something, you see something crazy, and you don't need repetition to memorize that. What we were able to do in the lab, and now what we do with people every day, is show you little tricks you can do in your head so that you can essentially activate that photographic memory on purpose instead of by accident.
That's incredible, because we're often taught, you know, I have friends who have a photographic memory, and I'm like, oh, that'd be so nice if I just had one of those. It's a bummer I wasn't born with it. What you're saying is you don't have to be.
Well, yeah, it's interesting is people with photographic memories actually sometimes take my program because they don't remember things that they hear as much, you know. So
they're so visual.
So there is actually a genetic predisposition, and we address that as well.
Wow. So tell me how the Farrow method could slow memory loss and why you say it's better than all these brain games we're seeing on our phones.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years, and the main principle in neuroscience that people don't talk about is called transference. What that basically means is that one skill does not necessarily translate to another skill. So let's say if you know how to play the guitar, that doesn't mean you know how to play the piano necessarily. When it comes to brain training, it's kind of like thinking, you know, this little brain game that I'm playing will somehow translate to having a sharper memory. That's kind of like thinking if I, work out my legs, my biceps are going to get bigger.
Right? Doesn't work that way.
So it doesn't work that way. So what actually improves your memory is actually memorizing stuff and then recalling it. So the methods that I teach show you how to do that throughout your everyday existence, everyday life. You do little tricks throughout the day, and you have a much sharper memory. And according to studies, actually, there's a lot of studies on this that show that with brain training like this, you can actually have as much as 9 more years of mental acuity in your senior years. This has even been shown with people with a predisposition to Alzheimer's and dementia. There's a lot of great, exciting evidence that shows that real, proper brain training, when done properly, can make a big difference.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the brain is a muscle. The more we work it, the stronger it gets and the longer it lasts.
But the more we work it in the right way.
In the Dave Farrow way, right?
Well,
right.
But essentially, it's like, doing math problems won't get you better at having a better memory. You have to do memory. That's essentially the principle.
So what could a student, whatever kind of student they are, achieve with the Farrow method?
Well, students actually come to me a lot of times because they're overwhelmed with their workload. So what we really focus on are simple techniques on how to memorize every technical term and definition, that sort of thing. So it seems like the way I'm saying it sounds really simple, but when you actually get to the point where you can master your memory, then so much other stuff kind of comes along for the ride. So something like 70 to 80% of everything you're going to be tested on at the university level can be mastered with memory. think about every formula, every definition, every technical term.
Memorize it, spit it back.
Right, but then beyond that, you can actually have more time. Like this doesn't preclude you from being skilled in other ways. It gives you more time to focus on kind of the higher level learning stuff because the memory work just takes a weekend.
That's incredible. So I know that you've helped make this a sport. What's a memory tournament club?
Well, really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to like high school and elementary kids. So we created a memory club. This is entirely kind of like our way of giving back on memorytournament.com. And essentially there's 30 clubs around the world, one actually on campus at eBay of all places, and then like Italy and India and all places like that, and 7 different countries. And essentially what it does is anybody can go on there and register their own club. It doesn't cost them anything. A lot of the tools are free or very affordable, but essentially they learn some of the basic memory techniques. And what we have shown is even kids in elementary school or kids with ADD, like I was diagnosed, even in those situations, what we've been able to show is that the memory tournament clubs, just practicing some of our game that we make a sport out of it, it shows that they're much better at test taking. So they'll be able to, raise their performance level, raise their grade level, and all through an extracurricular club that doesn't cost anything.
That's incredible, and I would imagine it also, being able to do all that probably in that spirit of competition, probably increases your self-esteem and a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, we've had some students who literally, they would come to us and they thought they were stupid. I wouldn't use that word for them,
Right.
but they used that for themselves because they were diagnosed with something or they had a challenge in math or something like that. Once they learn that they can do a few tricks in their head that kind of trick their brain into memorizing things at will without repetition, then all of a sudden they think, wow, I wonder what else I can do. And then their confidence really goes up.
I bet. You also, as a multifaceted, well-rounded person, run a public relations firm. How does your memory tie into that, and how do you combine memory techniques with public relations and marketing?
Well, I've been doing brain training for 20 years. So I've been doing it even longer than we've had the model of brain plasticity. So I did it before all these sort of brain training games get out there. And what it really gets into is psychology and understanding how people's brain work and what makes them tick. So what we really help companies with is showing them how to craft a marketing message or a brand or even a logo in a lot of cases that my team puts together in such a way that you're unforgettable. So one of the examples I use all the time is Geico. Geico does an incredible job of this. When you compare it to, say, State Farm or some of the others, they came up with the Get-Go. It's a play on words, but it's one that they're taking all the way to the bank. Other companies really avoided this because they didn't want to look silly, but when they realized, what the IPO is doing, what the stock is doing, what their sales are doing, they realized that in today's day and age where you have just a fire hose of information coming at you at all times, if you're the one company that's remembered, then you're the one who's going to get the sale 9 times out of 10. And that's been true with my own business. My business, the Farrow method, I came up with a little Egyptian Farrow hat, made it into a logo and everything, and we doubled our sales just from that alone. And obviously I am not Egyptian.
Nope.
It's just a play on words, but they're going to remember me before they remember, anyone else.
Right. I would imagine so, and it's relatively easy to remember, even though Farrow and Farrow aren't necessarily spelled the same way.
Exactly. Well, we were smart
Have you looked into legally changing your name so that?
Well, I just got the URLs for every spelling I could think
so you're
of.
covered.
So covered that way.
Now, you've been on over 2,000 media interviews. You've done Regis and Kelly, The Today Show, Dr. Oz, and you say there's obviously a lot of sales potential in doing those media interviews, even an unknown radio show.
Yeah.
In fact, you once sold over $100,000 worth of product in one radio interview on a station none of us have ever heard of. Mm-hmm. What's your secret?
Well, and that's really where it comes into understanding kind of how the brain works. I think there's a lot of things that we do with our media training, but I think the most important thing is to understand is to really put yourself in the mindset of the customer. A lot of times when you're trying to do an interview, you're trying to make everybody happy. You're trying to answer the question. You're trying to not look embarrassing. But really, the person who's watching doesn't care about any of that stuff, doesn't care about how self-conscious you are. They care about something in their lives. So if you can speak to what their hurt is, if you can speak to, so talking about my memory is never going to sell anything.
Right.
But talking about your memory will. Talking about somebody who's worried about losing their memory, talking about somebody who's going to college, university, and they're worried about, keeping up with everyone else, that is really what's going to sell. So what I do is I train people to really care, about customers and to, make that connection.
Aside from the memory business and the PR business, in the 5 minutes of spare time you have left, you're a new dad. You are also an inventor.
Yep.
What is this robotics project that you're doing? What is
I gotta have these fresh.
Farrowbot? What's a Farrowbot?
Some of our first things that we made as part of our prototype, and isn't it pretty?
It's gorgeous.
So when you can learn 8 times faster than anybody else on the planet and you have an interest in science and everything, I got into design engineering about 10 years ago and I really kind of became an inventor, and this...
Because that's normally what people do.
Listen, I'm not big into sports or music, so this is what I do in my spare time. I made all these custom parts, but really what this actually translates to is... the business model here, and I'm kind of launching it with you, is that every place right now where you see a mannequin, imagine if that was animatronic, if that was moving. And the reason it's not, the technology exists, but there's a bunch of other issues involving patents and
price, I would imagine.
Price point and all sorts of things. So what I'm doing is I'm creating an affordable animatronic robot that anybody can use. It's a platform that can be customized, both software and hardware. It's going to be interactive.
It's open source.
Every single Farrow bot will actually have its own Wi-Fi connection, so you can connect through an app to control it, all sorts of things like that. And yeah, and we're going to really open it up and you know, make this beautiful thing work for people. So no one's really thought of robotics as salespeople, as something that attracts customers. But I really want to corner the market on that, and I think it's worth billions.
I would imagine. I can't speak to the valuation, obviously. You'd have to talk to our friend Kevin O'Leary over at Shark Tank about that. But I would think that it would generate more interest and more sales if there's a mannequin walking around the mall with a dress on than just standing there motionless.
According to our initial data, we have approximately 58% more foot traffic when you have something moving in a window display, anything moving.
Right.
So when you add
why
to
they
that,
pay actors to stand there and move very slowly.
As you probably know, actually, I was hired by Sony to live in a storefront window in 2008 to sell their Sony reader, and just having the novelty of that for a month, they paid me very well to do it, and we sold a ton of those readers. It's something that catches the eye. The other thing to understand is that when you're the first person on the block that actually has animatronics in your storefront window, then you get all of the attention, you get all of the press and everything. So we're expecting a very large initial offering, a large number of people jumping in on this.
So how did you go from being good at memory to being good at technology?
Well, see, and that's really what I think is the future of education. You know, right now we think of education as, you know, you have an interest, you go to school, you get your degree, and then you get into a field, and that's what you do for the rest of your life. But technology is really changing that, where you can go on YouTube and you can learn a new software program. Heck, you know, a lot of people who went to university for some things, there's new software that makes a lot of what they learned obsolete, you know?
Sure, before they graduate.
Absolutely. So you have to be a lifelong learner. So the reason why this all ties in together is that I started off always being thirsty for knowledge, always wanting to learn, always wanting to grow and expand, and that's what led me to the interest in technology and the ability to actually facilitate that as well.
That's phenomenal for those of our folks at home who either want to learn to improve their memories, they want to stave off memory loss and dementia, they want to get more PR for their business, they want to get a robot.
Raise their little geniuses.
Raise their little geniuses. What is the best way among the myriad of ways for them to get in touch with you?
Well, you know my last name, Farrow, right now, so you can go on to DaveFarrow.com. You can
Farrow.
Yeah, you can Google Dave Farrow. The PR business is Farrow PR, and the robot is Farrow Bot. And it's pretty simple to spell all that, and you'll be able to find me and just contact our office, and we'll, whether it's you know, an investor looking to be involved in a startup or somebody who wants to change their PR and their marketing image, you know, we're here to help.
Well, thanks so much for coming. It's been an honor to have you.
Thanks very much for having me.